Every team, every topic, everywhere. This is Believe.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
FunBelt Podcast.
It's just a great conference that is at a point right now where I think clearly the best group of five conference in the country.
The state of Sunbelt football is the strongest in our history.
And we got to continue to showcase what our league is about.
This league is insane.
Yeah, it might be like one of those 8 wonders of the world.
And you can see just what a great group of five conference it really is.
It's a big deal.
Boy, life is looking pretty good in the Sunbelt these days.
All business, Tibbs. All business. Come on.
FunBelt Podcast, Dusty Thibodeau, Warhawk Report, Jeremy Harper from HowlRaiser.com. How goes there, Jeremy, as we get ready to wind up the softball and baseball conferences?
Well, you know what I did? I issued a tweet this afternoon. It said May 1st, so we are 1 month away from June content. So you know what that means.
We better hurry up and get all this in now.
No, it means you gotta get all your articles, like stuff like if your head coach, if the Sunbelt head coaches were vegetables, what would they be? You know, or top 10 reasons that you'd hang out at San Marcos. Just stuff like that, just constant fluff, because we have no content. So right now, with baseball and softball, now that the NFL draft is over, this is pretty much all we got.
We always have content, Jeremy. What are you talking about? We have the best guests. We have intriguing discussions about God only knows what. I have to go back and listen because I feel like I just kind of leave my body and it's just a rambling talking head to you.
No. Every time we talk, you offer the most penetrating insight. Like, I come away with a master class of college football and college basketball and college baseball too, and softball and volleyball. I mean, your depth of knowledge is impressive.
Or I just know how to bullshit.
Well, that's really 100% of what we do, is it not, right?
Some days. Yeah. But it is definitely baseball season, and we are getting ready to...
No. All right, yeah, let's talk about this. Go ahead. Let's just get over with.
Texas State takes 2 of 3 from South Alabama. The Sunday game was a football game. Luckily, the Bobcats went for 2. At one point, it was 21-8.
Jags, I think, scored 10 in 1 inning. I think so, something like that. I think they kind of just...
The Saturday game was the first to 10 wins, and the Bobcats excelled there, going 11-10 to get the series win there on Saturday. They remain the king of the standings, but Georgia Southern is really still the hottest team. But this weekend fell 2-1 to the Shants.
Yeah, I think that's a reminder, Tibbs, that the Chanticleers, they may not be having the best season. Georgia Southern may have the good record. Texas State may have the good wins. The chance will always be there. The chance will always be a good baseball program. And you do not want to see them when it comes Sunbelt tournament time. And if you see them even after the Sunbelt tournament, which I don't know if it's going to happen, you're not going to want to see them then either.
So Texas State has just about wrapped up the top seed.
Yeah.
But coming into the last few weekends of the season, nobody's eliminated. Even a team as high as South Alabama at 10-11 could find themselves sitting at home and not in Montgomery for that postseason tournament.
And you know why that is, Dusty?
Because we just cannibalize one another.
The bottom quarter. No, let's say it. Let's even say it. The bottom third of the Sunbelt standings is the most fascinating storylines in all of the Sunbelt.
Yeah, it's about a 2-game spread between being in Montgomery and not being in Montgomery.
Yeah. I mean, who do you got down there? You've got UTA, which took 2 of 3 from Arkansas State. You got Arkansas State, which
Jekyll and Hyde
statistically is not in last place. Somehow UTA is. Then you got Appalachian State with 6 wins, I believe. Then you've got ULM, who's constantly underperforming. Although I don't know what they did this weekend. I feel like they came away with at least 1 win this weekend.
They did have at least 1 win this weekend.
And then you have UA Little Rock, who's just not good. Somehow with enough wins to sort of stay away. And then South Alabama, maybe the most disappointing team in the conference this year. Like you just said, still could get eliminated, probably won't. But it's pretty fascinating down there. The basement is where the action is. That's where the pool table is, the dartboard, the toilet that just has no walls around it. It's all there.
Warhawks did not win, by the way. They blew a late lead and took the sweep by the Trojans.
Because I did notice that they were playing UALR pretty tough. So, yeah. Well, I'm sorry to hear about. I'm sorry that's happened. But your adopted team, the Bobcats, still on top.
Still sitting on top. On the softball side.
When do we start seriously talking about hosting regionals? Are we already in that discussion?
I think that's kind of fallen off the table there with Texas State's recent struggles, Georgia Southern's being swept or nearly swept by the Chants. I don't think that there will be a Sunbelt host this year unless something just really crazy happens. I think everyone else has to lose for them to gain the regional instead of the Sunbelt winning to get the regional.
But you think now, because you've obviously thought about this, now is the time to have that discussion. We are in that atmosphere right now. So start discussing whether or not regionals are going or who's going to host what. We're in that position now.
I don't think anybody hosts. I do think that the Sunbelt can get 2, probably 3 teams in with Texas State, Georgia Southern, and then kind of a toss up there between Coastal Carolina and Louisiana Lafayette.
What if both of them got
4 teams would be incredible. 4 teams. 4
and
teams.
Then who do we have? Then who do we have coming in? Southern Miss? They're pretty good.
They'll host a regional.
So Sunbelt baseball next year had better be like the talk of college baseball.
I think it will be the premier mid-major.
No. Not the mid-major, Thibodeau. I'm talking about the premier conference in baseball.
Not happening just yet. There is no Sunbelt Conference Network. There is not cheers of 30,000 football fans cheering SBC.
All right.
It just doesn't mean that much.
All right. You know what, though? I'm going to ignore your pessimism there and your facts and your realities. And I'm just going to say that next year, Sunbelt baseball, it's nothing but ESPN. It's nothing but like little side excursions by
ESPN 3 logins.
Yes, absolutely. I'm very excited about this.
On the softball side, something you know nothing about.
I know nothing about. So this is going to be all you, Tibbs. You're going to have to run with this. You're going to have to carry the weight of this segment. I'm just going to sit back and watch. It's like going to Silver Dollar City and watching those master craftsmen at work. But instead of watching a guy make like a straw basket or a horseshoe, I'm watching you explain to our listeners what's going on in Sunbelt softball. So hit it. I'm here to watch. I'm here to observe. I'm here to learn.
Like Chuck E. Cheese and the damn drummer that doesn't even have a drum set.
No, this is already starting off bad. This self-deprecation, that's not you, Tibbs. I want confidence. Just go ahead and blow it out of the water. It's all you. Here you go.
I confidently know that. Just like I know, Jeremy, segmenting there, that the Cajuns and Jags are neck to neck heading into the final week of the regular season. Both teams picked up series wins.
Okay.
Cajuns need just one more conference win to seal the regular season conference title. And they help themselves out just in case they do fall in the conference tournament coming up in Gulf Shores or Mobile.
Okay.
Cajuns picked up a 5-1 win midweek over the University of Houston. But you can't count out the Bobcats, winners of 11 straight. They need a sweep, and for USA and ULL to be swept to raise a trophy. Don't think that's going to happen.
What can we do to stop the rise of the Bobcats? They're like dominating every sport now.
I love that their Twitter account for softball has begun counting the number of trains and train horns that are a part of the softball games there in San Marcos. I don't know what it is of why.
Yeah, tell me more. Explain, please.
Why do good baseball stadiums have to be near or on railroad tracks?
I don't know. It seems like even growing up when I played baseball, it seemed like all baseball fields had a train in the outfield that would come through. And it would always, everybody would stop. Everybody stop, turn around, look at the train. Maybe that's where the most land is, right around a train yard or a train track. And it's just easy to stick a diamond out there or a set of diamonds.
I heard stories from old Southwest Texas alum talking about the train, how it kind of runs through the middle of San Marcos's campus. The train would make you late for class, Jeremy.
I take Arkansas State situated the same way, at the edge of the campus, big old long train track. They had to finally built a bridge over the train track. It was a big accomplishment.
Monroe has one out by the mall that seems to always stop at 8 o'clock, noon, and then around 4:30 to 5 o'clock, proceeding down the track just long enough to make you think that you're going to finally get past this train, only to see it back up.
I've seen that happen before. It's very frustrating to be in the situation where you're waiting for that train to get by. Hey, let me ask you a question, Tibbs.
What do you have?
Have you been keeping up with the transfer portal in basketball?
I have, because the Warhawks signed AD, a power forward out of the University of Alabama, Birmingham, coming in, has some Sun Belt Conference experience, starting off, I believe, at South Alabama before making the jump to UAB and now back into the Sun Belt at ULM.
Wow, he has taken quite the journey, the Sun Belt journey. So I have been keeping up with the transfer portal and Sun Belt basketball. And I just want to let you know that some of these guys are finding homes. But in the last few weeks, we've had the Sun Belt Freshman of the Year, the Sun Belt Sixth Man of the Year, the Sun Belt Player of the Year, the Sun Belt Defensive Player of the Year, and the Sun Belt Newcomer of the Year. They've all entered the portal. Now, Norchad Omier, he's going to Miami. He's the Sun Belt Player of the Year and the Defensive Player of the Year.
That is the U, Jeremy. That is not Miami. That's the U.
Yeah, I refuse to go into that.
Okay.
That's just not my thing.
Don't
you have Elijah McCadden. He was the Sun Belt Sixth Man of the Year out of Georgia Southern. He went to Memphis. You have
not the best move because they might not be playing basketball much longer.
Yes, that rumor is kind of floating around. You've got Effie Adiji. I could be mispronouncing that. He's from Troy. He was the Sun Belt top newcomer. He has not found a new landing space yet. But Duke Dean of Troy was the Sun Belt Freshman of the Year. He's going to Bradley.
Don't think that's a good move because while Bradley is one of those teams that when you see the brackets come out, you're like, they've been there before. I think Troy's going to be there before Bradley returns to the tournament.
I agree, but did you know that Bradley has been to the Final Four twice?
Were we alive during those times?
We were not alive. It was the 1950s.
Well, you might have been alive.
You bastard. All right, so also interesting about the Sun Belt portal. 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. About 11 Coastal Carolina players have entered the portal, including Ebrima Dibba, who is #1 in the Sun Belt for assists this year. He's gone to South Carolina.
Step up.
What? No. What?
Going to the SEC. Again,
No.
we're back to the cheers of the
No,
crowd.
no. That's not how we do it here. We don't do that here.
Okay, he downgraded to go to South Carolina. Is that better? Jamie?
Yes.
Okay.
He has sold out to go to maybe a place with more money, maybe a place with more resources, but not a better place than Coastal Carolina. Oh my God.
It is surprising. It does make you kind of wonder what's going on at Coastal, that pretty much your entire roster jumps onto the portal. Is that a coaching? Is that a program as a whole? Did somebody not pass their classes that they needed to? What's going on for that entire roster to jump into the portal?
What we really need to do is get a hold of somebody from Coastal Carolina to parse that out. I think they're kind of flying beneath the radar on that. But I'm wondering if Cliff Ellis, legendary coach for Coastal Carolina, and I think coached at some other place, and I don't know, the SEC, I can't remember where. But perhaps he's retiring? Is there something going on with Coach Ellis that maybe he's let his players know, but maybe no one else?
Or is it a question that he's not retiring and they're done with him?
I don't know, and I'll tell you why. I feel like they overachieved this year. And then they ended up in one of those, which tournament was it? The Classic? And ended up in the finals in that, or the semifinals, right?
That they did.
Yeah.
The
So
finals. And then they fell to Florida State.
yeah, I don't know if you can look at Cliff Ellis and go, yeah, you kind of underachieved. I don't know. But then again, it's a kind of a volatile world in college basketball. It's all about results. Don't get the results, then you're just not gonna, you're not gonna get the contract extension. Still, it is very weird that 11 Coastal Carolina players have entered the portal.
So as we pivot from there,
Yeah.
it is not the portal,
No.
but instead the NFL draft.
Did you watch it?
I did. And
know what-
listen to it on Sirius XM. There's a free plug for them.
Yeah.
I was impressed. The Sun Belt Conference continued to have multiple selections for 19 of the 21 years that they've sponsored football, dating back to 2001.
Yeah.
They had 5 players taken in the first 161 draft picks.
Yeah.
That was the fastest that the Sun Belt had ever reached 5 selections in conference history.
And I want to say they had a record too for having a certain number selected in the 4th round or before. I think there was also a tweet that came out from the Sun Belt office about that. And that's good news for the Sun Belt. We all know that when it comes to the Sun Belt, a rising tide raises all ships. Now, nobody from ULM got picked, which is always a surprise because it always seems like some random guy from ULM gets picked. No one from my Arkansas State got picked. We haven't had a guy since 2014. Everybody's pretty angry about that, but you got to move on. But there's some pretty good guys that got through there. The one guy that I would thought was going to have his name called and didn't was Hiley from Coastal Carolina.
No Hiley, but he did wind up getting in the undrafted free agent. Were you surprised, though, that South Alabama's Jalen Tolbert was the first guy off the board, 3rd round to the Dallas Cowboys?
Well, I just poking around all the mock drafts. Tolbert was high up on the list. Quite frankly, I liked Likely better than I liked Tolbert, the tight end out of Coastal Carolina. In fact, somebody asked me about that. I said, if I had to pick one guy out of the Sun Belt, I probably would have picked Likely. He's just a big guy, can catch passes, tight end. Tight ends were a pretty big commodity this year. But Tolbert torched everybody he played. It felt like he was in the league, Thibodeau, for 10 years. It was like 10 years, it felt like, of getting terrorized by Jalen Tolbert. To see him go to the Dallas Cowboys where he did, I think he got there in the right place. It didn't surprise me. Now I did think that Max,
Max Mitchell from Monroe, Louisiana.
Yeah, I thought he might get up a little higher. He didn't, but
I did too. I expected him to go. He went in the 4th round. I expected him to maybe go 2nd or 3rd, just because there was kind of that run of offensive linemen during that time frame. definitely showed what he was capable of in the Senior Bowl, as well as making it to the NFL Combine. I think the one that really surprised me, but at the same time didn't, was safety from Louisiana Lafayette, Percy Butler, going 2 picks after Max Mitchell in the 4th round to the Washington Commanders. I still can't get used to saying that.
You know what? I had Percy Butler. I didn't have like a draft list. I put out a story about who's going to get drafted from the Sun Belt. Percy Butler was in my 2nd tier. But I really expected highly, once again, to be selected over Percy Butler. I don't remember Percy Butler ever just dominating a game. Now, he might have, but he never really dominated games I watched. But he met all the NFL criteria. Highly, I've seen dominate games. So that's why I was a little surprised highly. But you know what? There's a lot of guys out there that dominated the Sun Belt that didn't get their name called. Corey Sutton is one such name from Appalachian State. Corey Sutton's one of those wide receivers who had been out there and just terrorized everybody he played against. Anytime he got up onto the field, he was injured sometimes, especially last year. He was just a tough guy to block. And then there was also another guy, Hennington. I forget. He was a wide receiver from Appalachian State too. Really big guy. I thought maybe he'd get his name called. Did not. So there were some guys that I expected maybe I would hear from, but as usual, I was wrong.
I think the one that really surprised me that he went as late as he did and was not again taken as more like an undrafted free agent was defensive end Jeffrey Gunter from Coastal Carolina, signing with the Bengals. Great player, but I feel like the likes of Hiley and a couple others in the Sun Belt Conference that were in the draft were better prospects than Gunner.
Oh yeah, Gunner was a guy that surprised me. But you know what? We've had people from Coastal Carolina, I can't remember who it was, who said Gunner was going to go. And I was like, yeah, okay, whatever. And he did. So there's something about him that really, he was my big surprise to come off the board. Although apparently he wasn't surprised to some people. But anybody from ULM that you thought deserved a chance?
You know, I thought our previous show guest there, Ty Shelby, had an outside chance of maybe falling down to that seventh round, the Mr. Irrelevant type draft pick, but didn't. Actually did wind up getting an undrafted free agent position. You know, I think a lot of times guys only focus on having their name called, so to say, in the draft, but there's a lot of guys that have, I say fallen, but still get the shot at the league going in the undrafted free agent slot, UDFA for short. You know, there's been a lot of guys in the past from the Sun Belt Conference that have really held on to those positions there. Brandon Silver's there from Troy, Larry Rose III, J.D. McKissick, Omar Bayless there from Arkansas State, Trey Regis from Louisiana Lafayette going to the Raiders. Yeah. Actually wound up making the roster at one point and getting several carries.
Yeah.
Josh Johnson from Seattle Seahawks, kind of a similar situation. Josh Peterson, son of Doug Peterson there, had a brief, I guess, Major League Baseball type of cup of coffee there with the 49ers, played a couple other places before kind of giving up. But then you have CJ Marable, also from Coastal Carolina, guys sticking around on practice squad with the Chicago Bears.
Yeah. Here's the thing. Thanks to Arkansas State's now 8-year drought in the draft, we talk about UDFA a lot. And here's what always comes up. Oh, that's better for the players. You know, they usually get a bigger contract. You know, it's not, they're not locked in to whatever team. They can bounce around, do what they want. There's a lot more freedom. Good for them. And then we kind of talk ourselves into, well, that's even better than getting drafted. And maybe it is better for the players, but for the Sun Belt and for the program, it's not good. Because what like Arkansas State and ULM and all these places want to say is, we put people in the NFL. They hear their name on draft day 1, day 2, or 3. They're going to hear that if you play for us, you got a shot to get drafted.
I don't think that's necessarily true. Because if you look at like a baseball program, for instance, where the MLB draft of old, where it was 40 rounds, and then some even earlier drafts where it was a draft until you just got tired drafting. I don't feel that saying Jeremy Harper was drafted in the 150th round by a team is really the same thing as this guy didn't get drafted, but still showed the strong work ethic that we taught him here, that we really helped him prepare for. And look, here's a picture of him at the practice squad with the Saints, with the Chargers, Seattle, Baltimore, whoever. I think that means a whole lot more to see that if you work as hard as you possibly can, you're going to get that shot.
I don't know. I don't know, Tibbs. I feel like it's a shallow world. And if you have a 3-day broadcast with the NFL and they're calling your name as much as even if you're in a 7th or 6th round, I just feel like that's just better exposure for the conference and for the team. Now, hey, Tibbs, I could be wrong about that. Maybe players do look like prospects do look a little deeper and go, oh, well, Arkansas State didn't have anybody called out on draft day, but look, they got a couple of UDFAs, and some of them have done well in the NFL. So that, I can get to the big show from Arkansas State. I don't know if prospects actually look that deep or care that much. I get this idea that they like the blitz and the glitz and the glitter of the NFL draft, but again, I could be wrong. I'm just an old man sitting here in Arkansas, griping about my team not getting anybody into the NFL draft.
Here's the last thing I have to say about that of why I don't think that being drafted really helps your program. You had one of the best wide receivers ever in T.Y. Hilton. First round draft pick.
Yeah.
What did that do for FIU?
You know what? Okay. First of all, I think it did a lot for FIU, but FIU failed to capitalize on that. That's my thought on that. That's FIU's fault. That's FIU just failing to strike when the iron is hot. And I tell you what it did for FIU. It got them out of the Sun Belt, right? They were able to go, oh, we're too good for the Sun Belt. We're going to go to Conference USA. Now, did they live up to expectations? No, they cratered. But it did give them a bounce. Yeah, I don't know if it's all T.Y. Hilton, although I often refer to him as Sunbelt legend T.Y. Hilton.
He is Sunbelt legend material, no doubt. This year, though, we did have a slew of UDFAs for the Sunbelt.
Okay.
Most notably, Levi Lewis headed to Seattle.
Good for him.
Javion Hiley headed to the Bengals. Him and Joe Burrow hooking up. I think that would be a great combination.
That'd be fun to watch.
Our former show guest there, Ty Shelby, getting his shot with the Chargers.
Yeah, okay.
And Shamoris Gilmore, offensive lineman for Georgia State, headed to Seattle as well. Maybe he'll be blocking for Levi Lewis, and they'll have a straight Sunbelt ticket.
Had a chance. I think there were some people thought he might get his name called. I'm glad to see he got a chance.
Even the new schools coming in had some guys wind up there. Two from Old Dominion, Isaac Weaver and Jordan Young, headed to the Chargers in Tampa Bay. Marshall's Alex Mollett, a snapper, headed to the Colts.
I'm glad to hear that. And I'll tell you why. I want these guys to come in strong. I want these new guys to come in hot. I don't want to wait for them to get good. I want them to be good now.
So, Jeremy, we talked about the guys that didn't necessarily have their name called, but then wound up getting the NFL call.
Yes.
With an undrafted free agent contract. A guy that knows all about that because he's actually been on the sports agency side doing both. He was able to represent Dak Prescott when he was drafted in the NFL from Mississippi State. Yeah. He's also represented guys like ULM's Marcus Green even on the undrafted free agent side.
No kidding.
From ProSource Sports Entertainment, NFL agent Bryan Creekmore joins us. Welcome in, Bryan.
Hey, thanks for having me, guys.
So, Bryan, tell us, the draft's over. how does that process kind of kick off and start with the whole undrafted free agent negotiations, calls, and everything else in that process?
So I think a lot of folks have the misconception that the undrafted free agent process starts after Mr. Irrelevant, right? A lot of people think that it holds until all the draft picks have been made, every team is done. But I would say that really the undrafted free agent process starts probably around the third round. If you've got guys, and if you're realistic, now there's different types of agents and they handle their players different ways. And I've always been, of the mindset that you've got to be honest with your guys. You've got to manage expectations. You've got to tell a guy that's a priority free agent guy that he's a priority free agent guy, and not tell him that he's you might go fourth round, you might go fifth round. I mean, yeah, sure, anything can happen, but the likelihood is that we know who the guys are that we've got, and we know where they're going, and especially on the agent side, if you take a guy that is going to be a free agent, priority free agent guy, that said, listen, just because you don't get drafted doesn't mean that you can't make waves in the league. We've gotten a couple of guys that haven't gotten drafted, and then they make their way up and they end up on active rosters, and they end up playing for years. And so it's not a knock on a guy to say, listen, I don't think you're going to get drafted, because we still, agents still devote and invest a considerable amount of money into these guys. But you've just got to let these guys know, hey, listen, realistically, you're probably not going to hear your name called. That doesn't mean that you're not good. It doesn't mean that you can't play. It doesn't mean that you won't end up starting one day. But you're probably not going to hear your name called. But what usually happens is around third round, fourth round, these guys that have been getting calls from, all these scouts and front offices during the pre-draft process, you start getting calls from them, and they basically say, hey, listen, and let's say we've got a hypothetical here that I represent a running back. And they say, listen, the running back coach calls, and he said, listen, I know we've been, talking to you, I really like you. I think you can play. I think you're a great fit in our scheme. I want to take you, in the fifth round. That's where I've got you pegged, and I'm going to go and I'm going to fight for you. So just kind of keep your phone on you, and be waiting. And then the fifth round will roll around, and you get that call. Well, they ended up, they had to get a safety. But I'm going to try to get you with our next pick. And so it's for the players, what it is, and for an agent that might not have done it very long, it's kind of this, this wooing game, right? I'm going to tell you that I love you. I'm going to tell you that you're pretty. I'm going to tell you that I want you. And then at the end of the draft, you say, man, I fought for you all the way. I wanted to get you, but we couldn't. But now that it's over, I can make something happen. And here's why you need to come and sign with me. And they give you the rundown of what they can do for you, as far as if they can give you any kind of a signing bonus. They can, they'll tell you what they see your role in the offense being. They can even offer some guarantee in your undrafted free agent contract, which is pretty B flat when they send it. And so that's what you start getting all along, starting in the earlier rounds of the draft, is you start getting these calls of, hey, I really want you. I'm going to try to draft you. And maybe it's true, maybe it's not. It doesn't really matter, as long as the player and the agent think that it's true. It's so that they, the player, because they've already got in mind, what they're going to do once the draft is over, because there's tons of talent that's left. There's tons of talent that doesn't get picked up. You look in this draft, you had Justin Ross, you had Big Cat Bryant, you've got these guys that should be on a team, should be drafted. And every year you look at it, you say, God, how did that guy not get drafted? So it's not that these guys don't have talent. It's just that there were other needs or better fits or whatever it may be ahead of them. And these teams know that. And so they start building their post-draft signings, early on. They start working on that because they want you to know, hey, remember, we didn't wait until the end of the draft. We didn't wait until everything was said and done to call you and say, hey, we really like it. Because some teams will. There are some times where you hear from a team for the first time in the entire process, after the last pick, and you get a call from a team that you haven't talked to at all, and they say, hey, we want to sign your guy. And when you compare that to this other team that's been calling you since the third round, the player usually says, well, these guys have been interested in me for longer, I'm going to go that way. So it's a little bit of a shell game, but that's in a nutshell kind of how it goes.
Well, okay, so Tibbs and I were talking a little bit before you got on the air. What is the advantage, or is there advantages to being an undrafted free agent as opposed to being drafted in the later rounds? Is there an advantage that you have?
Yeah, I mean, I would say so, because what, the advantage is, of course, listen, everybody wants to get drafted. And there's not a single agent that if you went to him and said, hey, listen, would you rather have your guy get drafted in the 7th round, or would you rather have him sign, as a free agent? Everybody wants to be drafted. It's a feather in your cap. It's a once in a lifetime thing. You can tell your kids and your grandkids, I got drafted to the NFL. It's a special process and it means a lot. But when you're talking about fit, and when you're talking about where a player wants to be, and it might be that an ex-college coach is there. It might be that they've got teammates there. It might be just that, they don't want to play in, and I'm just, throw a city out here. Not that I have anything against any of the NFL cities. I want them all to take the players that I've got. But let's say they don't want to play in Buffalo in December. They, and they've got a chance to go play in Los Angeles. So there are different things that matters to different guys. And like I said, it might be a better scheme fit. It might be that the number 1 and number 2 guys contracts are coming up and they're not going to be there for long, and the guy's got a chance to show out, or he's played against some of the guys in front of him and he knows that he's better than them, and he says, hey, I can win out there easier than I can win out, let's say at a team that just picks you towards the end because they want to be a camp body. Because let's face it, the security, the job security with a 6th round pick, 7th round pick, and undrafted free agent, pretty much the same. I mean, they have zero qualms cutting anybody that's a late round player because they don't have a significant amount invested in you, really. So it's not like there's a carrot for the team say, okay, I'm going to keep this guy because I've drafted him. When it gets to that later round, it doesn't matter as much. I won't say it doesn't matter at all, but it doesn't matter as much. So having some control over where you go and what city you're in and what scheme you're in and what guys you have to beat out to stay in that uniform means a lot.
So, Brian, with that, what kind of money are we talking about in these undrafted free agent, or is it really kind of just a roll of the dice of what you as an agent can negotiate and what the player's really asking for?
So every year there's a certain amount that each team has devoted to the free agent signings. And it's not a ton. It's, as far as doing signing bonuses and stuff like that. So sometimes it's, hey, I can't give you a signing bonus, but I can give you a guarantee. Sometimes you're looking at, $5,000, $10,000. We've had some that have gotten upwards of around $20,000, $25,000 in guaranteed money, but you're not looking at a lot because they've got to split it between their entire undrafted free agent class. And so, unless you're just somebody that, no idea how you fell through the cracks, but we really, really want you and we're going to, put the money on it to keep you there. You're not looking at a ton of money, but so, sometimes you can negotiate that. Sometimes the teams say, hey, I don't have any money left, especially if you're a later sign. But it just, it depends on what you can, really how bad the team needs you, what the agent can negotiate. And then sometimes how early you pull the trigger and say, listen, I'm going to you. Because if you wait, if you lollygag around and say, well, I've got a couple of offers, I got a couple of irons in the fire, let me see how this plays out, you might lose some money.
So I was wondering, Brian, is NIL having any effect on kids wanting to explore the draft? Have you seen that yet? Have you seen some kids saying, hey, listen, I think I'm going to stay another year in college. I'm getting this NIL money, so I really don't need to try to take that risk into entering the draft and hitting it big just now. Or are you seeing that at all yet, or do you think that's going to happen?
I mean, the NIL stuff has really kind of upended everything to do with the process. And right now it's the Wild West, and I couldn't tell you how things are going to pan out as this goes on. I have to assume that states are going to try to regulate this. I have to assume they're going to try to rein it in. I have to assume the NCAA is going to try to rein it in, because right now I think they're kind of feeling, and this is just my personal opinion on it, but I think they're kind of feeling like they've lost the control that they had on the players and had on institutions as well. So I don't know what it's going to do in the future. Right now, the thing is that these large NIL deals that you're seeing, and I can only speak for football. I don't recruit any other sport. I don't do baseball. I don't do basketball. I don't do gymnastics or any of the women's sports where you are seeing a good bit of NIL money getting devoted to. I only do football. But the guys that are getting the large NIL deals, the ones that really, kind of tip the scales, they're not saying, well, okay, now that I got this, I'm gonna wait, because they can make so much more money going to the NFL. So a guy that was, going to be a first round draft pick let's say as a junior, is not going to say, okay, well, now I've got this NIL money, I've got a little breathing room, I can stay and I can finish out. I mean, sure, there's going to be the odd player that says, hey, yeah, I'm going to stay because I want to get my degree. But for the most part, these guys are by the time they hit junior year, they're ready to move on. And sure, the money is nice, but you got to kind of put it in perspective, is that they go on to the draft, they're going to have their team contract, they're going to have bigger deals that are coming their way, because once you get into a major market city, I mean, a kid that's in, let's say Moscow, Idaho, right? He doesn't have the market that, hey, man, he just got drafted to the Rams, or he just went to the Dolphins, or he just went to the Jets or the Giants or wherever with these major media markets. I mean, there's more money to be made there than, Jimmy Shake Shack down the street from the campus that's going to give you a free meal and $100. I mean, it doesn't make sense. So these guys I don't foresee it keeping guys. Now, I think that what you might see, even though that's not supposed to be the intention, is I think that you're going to see guys going to institutions where they see larger NIL deals being signed out of high school. I think that you're going to see that, as they're saying, hey, man, I have the marketing potential. If I'm as good as this guy that's getting, whatever, I'm as good as him. Let me go there, and, I can make that kind of money and still get to the league and get my contract and all that. So I think that might be a different side of it, but I don't think it's going to keep guys in school.
So I know you said you deal only in football, but surely you have kind of a network of other agents that you're talking with. Do the other sports kind of have these same issues and the same discussions as the football discussion?
Yeah, I mean, so the college athlete, regardless of sport, there's still kids that a lot of times, you've got kids that came from nothing, that have nothing, that are struggling, that have family that are struggling, and NIL helps out. Making that little bit of extra money, because people don't understand, if you haven't been around college athletics, people don't understand the types of schedules that these kids have. They don't understand that there's really not time to go and work a job. I mean, when I was in college, I have zero athletic ability. So I was not playing for any collegiate team. So, I went and I had a job, and I worked for the campus activity center. And I was working at GameStop for a little while, and, I was able to make some money and go out on a date with my girlfriend if I wanted to, or go on a little trip with my friends. But these college guys, they can't do that. And I say college guys, I mean, guys, girls, the whole 9 yards. It's not unique to any sport. They don't have that kind of money, and they don't have the ability to just go out and get a job to do that. So NIL really does help these kids. Because they, they're regular kids. They still want to go and buy a new pair of shoes. They still want to go to the movies. They still want to buy a new PS5 when it comes out. And if they were working, if they weren't an athlete, if they weren't, performing for the school, they'd be able to go do that. So I think that NIL really helps those kids out. And I see it overall as a net benefit to the kids and honestly to the institutions, because it does allow for some of these kids that are quality players, that are good athletes, that help their team win games, that are maybe they go on to the next level, maybe they don't, but some of those will help the kids stay in. And so we're talking here about the pinnacle of athletic achievement, which is going on to play your sport professionally. But when you're talking about these other kids that are still great athletes and still play at a high level, I think for some of them, to kind of go back to the other question, I think maybe it will help some stay in longer. Not the ones that are primed and ready to go for like I said, the professional levels, but the average player that is out there, I think it does help.
Do you feel that we're headed down a course in all of college athletics? And I kind of ask this as a loaded question, where if I'm a student athlete and maybe I'm at a mid-major college, but some of the bigger P5s are calling, that I'll want to talk to you as an agent in order to make sure that is the right move for me in my professional aspirations?
I've always felt like the more input, the more quality input players can get, the better. I've always felt like it was a little bit odd that you restrict access to people that do this for a living, that see it for a living, that are dealing with scouts and front offices and GMs and these college towns that have been around them and have been around programs and know how the programs are going to treat their athletes. I mean, there are definitely some schools, from your P5s down to your G5s that treat their athletes better, and not just facilities and their meal plans or whatever, but as far as promoting them and getting the word out about them and making sure that the professional teams and scouts are aware of them. There are some teams that do a heck of a lot more than others. And so, like I said, my position has always been more information is better, as long as the sources are okay. And I'm fine with a college saying, listen, if you want to talk to our players, you got to be registered. You've got to be vetted. We've got to make sure that you're not some shyster that's coming in and giving them bad advice. I'm fine with that. But the way it used to be, where it was, don't come within 100 yards of our players. We don't want you talking to them. We don't want you to send them a tweet. We don't want you following them on Instagram. And that's the kind of attitude that a lot of schools had towards agents was, keep away from our athletes. We'll handle it until it's your turn. And a lot of those schools didn't do a good job. And you had guys that came out and I get calls from players that I don't even represent that say, hey, Brian, I know that you're not my agent, but what the heck is going on? What am I supposed to do from here? What, these are, we send to any athlete that we talk to, we've got a PDF of questions that we say, listen, these are the things that you should be asking your whoever it is you're interviewing with to be your agent, to be your representation. And we say, don't just ask me these questions. You need to ask anybody these questions. And so there are questions that these guys have never even considered asking to other agents or anything. And I think that on the front end, going into meeting with colleges and universities and going into these programs, a lot of these kids, unless they have, brothers or sisters that have been through the process or people in their family that have been through the process, they don't know what to ask. And so they get, roped into these situations where, a coach tells them, and sells them on a dream that they know is never going to occur. Or the coach is saying, I'm going to be there for the long haul, knowing they've got another contract waiting in the wings and they're about to leave. It just happens. And so I don't see the harm in having people that are experienced helping guide a player towards what's best for them, because we're looking at a short window, right? When, I was talking to my wife about this the other day is that, the agent process and the NFL experience, a lot of people say the NFL is not just the National Football League, it stands for not for long, right? And so it doesn't hurt my feelings when you've got a guy that says, listen, I'm a young kid, I'm 20, 21 years old. and all of the meaningful money that I'm going to make in my life statistically is going to be made within the next 5 years, right? So it doesn't hurt my feelings when a player says, listen, you know, I've interviewed a ton of people. I like you, but I like these guys, and these are guys that I think I'm going to go with. That doesn't hurt my feelings because they've got to be a little bit selfish. And I don't understand why having an agent on the front end of things to help them make sure that they're making those good decisions at the beginning, why anybody wouldn't want that. If that, you know, is a roundabout way of answering it, I guess.
Brian, I have got one last question for you before we let you get back to your bourbon. What Nicolas Cage movie have you watched that everybody likes, but you kind of hate?
One that I am not well. I guess everybody hates Wicker Man. I guess I can't say that everybody.
No, you can't pick Wicker Man. No.
I don't think that there's anybody that watched that one. It was like, oh yeah, that's the one that I like. One that I was not a big fan of, that he got really good reviews for, was his participation in the Kick-Ass movies. I was not a big fan of those. You know, I know that everybody said, "Oh, he's so great. That was a great performance by him." I didn't particularly like that one. And as much as I like National Treasure, I didn't like National Treasure 2 either. So I'd say either of those.
You know, I just finished I have National Treasure Thibodeau on DVD format, but I was watching National Treasure 2, and you're right. That was not his best work.
No, it might have been the script, but definitely not one I would pick. You know, you put National Treasure 2 or Lord of War in front of me, I'm picking Lord of War every time.
Oh, I love Lord of War.
Great movie.
I know. And he's awesome in that. Lord of War is great.
Yeah.
And you know what's another movie I like him in that I cannot remember the name of it, but Jessica Biel's in it. And he's like, he can look into the future and see how things play out. What?
Next.
Yes, Next.
That's what it's called, Next, right?
Yes.
Or is it Knowing?
Knowing.
Knowing's another movie. That's the one where the aliens come down and the world's gonna that one's good too.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. I understand that he's got some duds. Some of these direct to DVD, pay the IRS type movies, but he's got a solid body of work. That's what I'll say.
Listen,
just please, Brian, tell me you're not the kind of super fan that you have a Nicolas Cage blanket.
Oh, I definitely do. I definitely do. I'll tell you this: when my first child was born at the hospital, I wrapped her in a blanket of Nicolas Cage's face.
Now, do you have
God's honest truth?
Do you have gold-plated pistols that you carry like he did in Face Off?
I wish. Hey, he just did a there was just an article out. I think I shared it on my Facebook where he said that that there have been talks for a Face Off 2.
Oh my God!
Now, I don't know how substantive those talks have been. I don't know how you do it, considering Castor Troy died in Face Off. But you know, the magic of Hollywood. Maybe they can bring him back.
You know, I could see them that, you know, he might have died, but they saved his face.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
why not?
If I'm remembering right, he had a kid in that movie. And there's been enough time.
We get John Woo back. We can have the doves flying out of the corners. We can get the slow motion.
Yeah.
We could get John Travolta to maybe get back into shape and get back into his role. I would love to see a face.
No, leave him out of shape. Leave him out of shape. This is real world. Right. You know, this is down the line.
Old back John Travolta. All right. I'm paying big money for that.
See how it goes.
I would even get like a subscription to like Paramount Plus if that's where it showed up. I would go ahead and do that.
That sounds like a free crap.
I would watch it.
All right, Brian, thank you so much for being on the show. You did clear up a lot of inside information that we desperately needed to know about about the free agency, about what happens after draft day, what happens during draft day. Thank you very much for sharing that insight.
Yeah, no, thanks for having me on, guys, and I appreciate it.
So there we have it, Jeremy. There's the insight of how undrafted free agency works. And now it is time for your favorite part.
What's that?
Plugs, promos, and parting shots.
Yes, I love plugs, promos, and parting shots. Hellraiser.com has put together a sort of unofficial timeline of what I call the destruction of college sports, beginning in 1979 when a channel called ESPN hit the air. Take a look at it, tell me if you agree with it or not. But I think we're Tibbs, I think we're headed into deeply unsettling, uncharted territory in college sports, and I'm not sure if we're going to weather the storm.
I definitely don't see how the G5 weathers this. It's definitely going to be a have and have nots. I know that we always talk about that between the P5s as well as the G5, but the divide is coming where I really feel like the G5 is going to be almost like the 1AA of old.
It's too bad because I felt like the group of five was sort of closing in a little bit. Sort of the talent gap wasn't as big anymore. We're getting our wins. And it's almost like the universe came down and said, no. There really just needs to be about 12 teams. So
yeah, and I don't know how good that is for the sport as a whole. I mean, do you really care to see Clemson and Alabama year in, year out in the national title game? Or do you want that wild card of the Cincinnatis or whoever kind of sneaking in and making noise?
No, I think one thing, the beauty about college sports is that as a fan, as somebody who has gone to those schools, you become almost part of the fabric of the team. Like you could adopt a professional team like the Tennessee Titans, for instance, and it can be a lot of fun and you can feel like you're part of that, but you're not really as part of the institution as you were as a fan of your alma mater. Like I will always be Arkansas State and the Red Wolves because I went through that institution. I will always have that. So to have my school demarginalized by this new NIL system, the new transfer portal, the way the Power Five is really trying to consolidate power from behind the scenes, take it away from the NCAA. It grates me. I don't know what I will do in the next 5 years if the landscape of college football is such that I only get Clemson and Alabama to root for.
Definitely ruins the game as a whole. For my parting shot, kind of a PSA.
Okay.
It's almost time for midterm elections. Make sure you're registered to vote, getting out to vote. I know where I live, we're having a lot of school board elections. So make sure you get out and rock the vote, as they used to say in the 80s, to make sure that your voice is heard, because school boards are just as important as your representatives.
You know, we get so wrapped up in who's the senator and who's the representative and who's the president, but it's really local elections where big differences can be made and the biggest impacts can be made on your life. So absolutely, Thibodeau, get out there and vote, find out who's on the ballot, do a little research, understand what they're about, and make your vote count.
In addition, make sure you follow us on Twitter, FunBelt PC, where we will have some news later this week.
Oh, yeah. I know the news. I'm going to keep it quiet, though. In the meantime, following FunBelt Podcast on Twitter is probably more important than voting, Thibodeau. So if you had to do one or the other, I'd say
it is a vote. It's a vote of approval of what we are doing.
That's exactly right.
Why did our followers just go down?
What's happening here?
Edit that out, Dusty.